The Yu-Gi-Oh manga is great, and I really liked the first 7 chapters, despite being nothing like the show I was watching at the time in 2003. And knowing what I do now, I appreciate the first 7 volumes of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga a lot more. I mean, as far as I can tell, this was the original gaming manga, and it never ran out of interesting scenarios to make up the games featured in it. Some, like Duel Monsters, Dungeon Dice Monsters, and Capsule Monsters, became staples of the series, where others were basically just typical flash-in-the-pan games that appeared once per chapter. And the thing about about the first 7 chapters of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga is the fact that it never ran out of interesting gaming scenarios with which to make up its chapters. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 list of games from the first 7 volumes of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga. And don't worry, there will be a link to the Yugipedia manga games page in the description below.
Noun, as is a park created by Seiko Cable used to kill Yuji Muto through an attempt to recreate Dark Yuji's shadow games. It consists of 5 chambers, each aptly named Death T1, Death T2, Death T3, Death T4, Death T5.
I admit that Stardust Shooter, the Horror Execution Ride, the Blood Puzzle, and Rhythm Blocks would all be bitches, each in their own right. But the Deathmatch, the Capsule Monster Chess mini-boss level, and the Duel Monsters boss level, that's what would make it all worth it. And that's why Death T is number 10 on this list.
Game of Death was the 3rd and final stage of Dark Yuji and Shadi's shadow game, the Trial of the Mind. Shadi tried to use it to expose trusting too much as a weakness in Dark Yuji's heart. The rules: each player took turns tossing the Millennium Puzzle, and their opponent moved 2 floor tiles in the direction that the puzzle landed pointed in.
What can I say? If black magic were real, I definitely would want to replicate this. There's kind of a reason that when I was rewriting my Yu-Gi-Oh fanfic, I intended to have this as kind of like an epilogue shadow game, existing before Duel Monsters, to show what the shadow games were capable of.
And Treasure Hunt. The rules of the game were that Dark Yuji's true soul room existed somewhere within his soul, and if Shadi could find it, he could then see the power that he seeks. Shadi mentioned that, when he enters someone's soul room, he can redecorate, which can let him control the person and even destroy their personality. He then accepted the challenge. Dark Yuji warned Shadi not to think that the game was easy, as it is much more dangerous than he thinks. In order to find the true room, Shadi began opening the doors one by one. On opening the first one, a stone pillar was dropped from above, which Shadi barely managed to dodge. Dark Yuji laughed and asked if Shadi gave up. He then disappeared through a wall, telling Shadi that he would be waiting in the true room. Shadi continued to search. He understood that the soul was tightly closed against strangers and set to confuse him, but he was determined to find the room. Eventually, he found the room, where Dark Yuji was sitting on a throne. He wondered if this was the true room, but as he approached Dark Yuji, the floor under him began to collapse, leaving him dangling from one hand. If he fell, he would be trapped in Dark Yuji's soul forever. However, Dark Yuji held out his hand and helped Shadi back up.
If black magic was real, this is definitely something I'd want to replicate. I mean, look at it. It's like that painting from the beginning of the Rick and Morty episode, Morty's Mind Blowers, and it's got a whole bunch of doors with a risk versus reward value. There could be something good behind the door, there could be something bad. And I really gotta say, that premise is exactly what makes this one so awesome. I can't believe that Konami hasn't tried to replicate this in virtual form. Put it on Steam or make it a VR game. I'd even be willing to take this in VR format.
Known as the Dark RPG, or Dark Role-Playing Game in the Japanese version, is the final shadow game in the Yu-Gi-Oh manga. Each player was represented by a character card, with Dark Yuji's being the Pharaoh card and Dark Bakura's being Bakura, King of Thieves, his own character, and Akhenaten, also known as Akhenaten's mummy's character. A deck of cards, which were initially blank. When a player envisions an item or remembers a person from their past, the picture of the item or person appeared on the card. Each character card contains stats, include the baggage indicating their life force. If a character's baggage empties, they die. Most characters have a single bar as their baggage. Others, such as Zorknik or Fades, have multiple bars. By paying back, characters can summon Cat and engage in battle. When characters are not given commands by their controller, they behave according to their own motives. The game featured 7 Millennium item cards, which at the beginning of the game are in possession of Dark Yuji's party, the Pharaoh and the High Priests. Each player had a special ability.
Yeah, essentially a dark magic role-playing game where you get to relive essentially the origin story for the Shadow games. That would have been awesome. I mean, if black magic was real, I would love to essentially replicate this game. I mean, I already made my own Yu-Gi-Oh! RPG campaign based on this story. If black magic was real, I'd definitely take it to the next level by essentially replicating the Shadow role-playing game from the final chapters of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. I mean, especially with the card function. Anytime I or my opponent would think of an item or a person, they or it would instantly become part of the game. I mean, just imagine the possibilities for something like that. I could have any weapon I want in order to slay Zork, and I'd be able to recruit anyone I can think of as my ally.
Four Aces is a card game Ryuji Otoji played with Katsuya Jinauchi for a bet. Ryuji's version this game is played with 4 ace cards, which the challenger sets face down and shuffles in the table. The player picks any 2 of the face-down aces. His goal is to pick either 2 red aces diamonds and hearts or 2 black aces spades and clubs. By picking 2 aces of the same color, the player wins, otherwise, the challenger wins. Ryuji tricks the player to think this is a fair game, with a 50% chances. However, this is a bar bet. It works like this. Ryuji tricks the player by using the term choose 2 cards at the same time, which makes it look like the player has 50% chance. However, one must think of it as picking 1 card at a time. After the first card is picked, there are 3 cards remaining, and out of them, only one has the same color as the one the player picked. So, the actual chances of winning in this game are only 1 in 3. Ryuji's version noticing that the game is not fair, Dark Yuji challenges Ryuji using alternative conditions. A Joker card is added to the aces. Both players take turns picking one of the 5 face-down cards. Whoever picks 2 aces of the same color first wins. If a player picks the Joker, they lose. Other results end in a draw. At first, Ryuji thought Yuji had set him in another bar bet, but then he realizes this is a fair game. Any other result would end up being a draw, so the player who picks the Joker first loses. The chance is 1 in 5 for the first player, and since both Yuji and Ryuji had the chance to start, the game was fair.
I actually really like this one, and not just because of how simple it is. I like this one because it's the kind of game you could play in real life. In fact, ever since I read this chapter of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga, I wanted to play 4 aces. I wanted to try this game out in real life. I even got a miniature deck of cards to take around with me, just in case I'd ever get the opportunity to play this game in real life.
The World is a tabletop RPG role-playing game similar to Dungeons and Dragons from the manga. Aochi and Honda agree that they didn't know much about the world of the game, like who the enemy was or what the purpose was. Enzu pointed to the village, saying that's where you usually go to get information in an RPG. Yuji agreed, and the adventurers took 5 turns to get the village. Dark Acura lifted up the tile containing the village, revealing the interior of the restaurant and the tavern underneath. The characters moved over to the counter at the tavern and Janouchi called for the barman's attention. Janouchi informed him that they were highly skilled adventurers and asked how they could make money. The barman said, if money could solve the villagers' problems, he'd give the adventurers all he'd got, but the adventurers would be dead before they could claim their reward. However, Janouchi said it sounded like the barman had a story and demanded to hear it. The village was peaceful up until recently when the Dark Lord Zork assassinated the king and changed the castle into a den of evil. Since then, monsters have been appearing in their valley and many villagers had fallen prey to them. Janouchi was disgusted with the monsters getting away with it and insisting that they would take care of Zork. He demanded some gold off the barman. The barman directed the adventurers to another villager who could show them the way to Castle Zork. She and Honda roared with laughter at how the villager looked like Mr. Carita. The villager was in fact Mr. Carita, sealed into a miniature, and he tried pleading with them to help him. The players wondered if they just heard the miniature talking, and if he said Janouchi's name. Dark Acura mentally threatened Carita to play his role as villager or die. Carita then gave the adventurers directions to Zork Castle and warned them to stay out of the forest. This time they thought it was Acura throwing his voice when he spoke. Encounter. The adventurers left the village and entered an area with a random encounter rate of 30%. Dark Acura made a judgment roll to see if they would encounter a monster. He rolled a 21, which was less than 30, so a level 3 goblin appeared. Janouchi's character made the first move. Based on his level, speed and weapon, Dark Acura calculated that Janouchi needed a percentile roll of 40 or less to kill the goblin. Janouchi rolled a 12 and easily defeated it. Acura flipped over a set of tiles nearby, displaying the forest on the other side, and told the adventurers that there was now an enemy encounter rate of 80%. Dark Acura made a judgment roll of 0.5. Since it was less than 80, monsters appeared and were significantly strong due to the low roll. The monsters included Pokey Ibiga and 3 others. Janouchi went first and tried attacking Biga. However, he rolled an 82, while he needed 30 or less for the attack to succeed. This caused his character to trip and fall. Hunter went next and rolled a 21, causing his character to shoot a hole in Biga, killing it. Yuji rolled 25, allowing his character to use hand power to attempt to brainwash Pokey with a 50% chance of success. The move succeeded and the evil was removed from Pokey, making it an ally. Anzu rolled 0, a super critical. This allowed her to use her top-level magic, Apprentice Big Bang, and destroy the remaining 3 monsters. Adventurers prepared to move on. Zork announced that they had fallen for his trap by entering the forest and revealed who he really was by changing into his true form. He also informed them that the Holy Sword didn't exist. In the adventurers by surprise, Zork hit initiative for their battle. Dark Acura rolled the super critical 0, allowing him to inflict mind all on Anzu, trapping her soul in her miniature. Dark Acura explained what had happened to Anzu, how players would be trapped in their miniatures when he rolls a super critical 0, or when the player rolls a fumble 99, and that the only way to save her was to defeat Zork. Janouchi rolled the dice, not realizing it wasn't his turn. However, he rolled a 0 and had his soul trapped in his miniature too. Dark Acura advised Yuji to think carefully, because if he and Honda get trapped in their miniatures, they won't have anyone to roll their dice, causing them to automatically lose and be trapped in Monster World. As Honda took his turn, Dark Acura calculated that he must roll less than 70 to conquer his fear of Zork's powerful aura and go first. Honda rolled a 94 and called it stupid, because he wasn't really afraid of Zork. Dark Acura laughed and says that there was no you, only your character. Zork took initiative and Dark Acura rolled a super critical 0. Yuji suspected that Dark Acura tampered with the dice to roll 2 super criticals in a row. Honda was then sealed in his miniature. Anzu, Jinouchi and Honda are sealed in miniatures. Acura tells Yuji that he is the only one left and must roll the dice and move all the pieces by himself. He also explains that if a character's hit points reach 0, they will die, and not just in the game, but in the real world. Yuji's friends tell him he can do it and beat Zork. Honda's gunman got his chance to attack Zork, and Dark Acura instructed Yuji to roll for Honda. However, Yuji requested to have his soul transferred to his miniature too. Since the Game Master is to be of service to the players, Dark Acura complied and sealed Yuji's soul in his miniature. Dark Acura began to celebrate his victory before realizing that Dark Yuji had now taken Yuji's place. Dark Yuji rolled a 3, causing Honda to use his Thunder Grenade attack and blast off Zork's left hand. Zork's hand mutated into an eyeball and a dragon. Kokia informed the adventurers that Zork was the source of all darkness and would continue to spawn monsters until they put out his evil. Zork left the battle and explained that he had a special place prepared for his battle with the adventurers at Zork Castle. Adventurers proceeded to battle the monsters. Dark Yuji rolled for Jinouchi and used the double hit technique to get a 0. This allowed Jinouchi to attack and easily defeat the eyeball monster. Seeing its companion slain, the dragon hesitated and lost its turn. Dark Yuji then rolled for Yuji in an attempt to tame the dragon. The success rate was only 10%, but Dark Yuji used the double hit technique again and rolled a 0, allowing Yuji to brainwash the dragon into an ally, pal. It became clear that Dark Yuji and Dark Acura were both using tricks to control the outcome of their rolls, so they agreed to both just let the dice slide out of their hands in future to prevent the use of such technique. Adventurers proceeded to Zork Castle. The castle diorama used for the game opened up, displaying some interior rooms. The group spotted a suspicious-looking tower, containing a pedestal with 2 semicircle markings at the top of its front face. Dark Yuji suspected it was a trap, but didn't warn the others quick enough. After the adventurers entered, a spiked ceiling dropped on them. Dark Acura, thinking instant death traps were amateur, had it set such that the ceiling landed on their heads and held them in place, rather than killing them. Knowing the breaking point of the lead figures, Dark Acura estimated 3 turns before the adventurers were crushed. The middle of the ceiling contained a block just above the pedestal, with similar semicircle markings at its bottom. Dark Acura explained that it was a puzzle and Dark Yuji needed to create a column to support the ceiling via a certain dice roll in order to save his friends. Dark Yuji rolled a critical 0-4, but to no avail. Dark Acura gave the hint that he needed to roll a double. Dark Acura made the monster encounter roll to see if Zork appears. With a 30% chance of it happening, he rolled a 28, causing Zork to emerge. Dark Yuji hurried and rolled a 0-3, which had no effect. Since his target couldn't move, Zork's attack had a 95% hit rate. Dark Bakura rolled a 41 and Zork struck the adventurers, dropping Jinouchi and Yuji's HP to 15 and 13 respectively. Dark Yuji realized that the carvings on the two blocks were parts of two numbers, with their middles missing. The numbers that could match the carving were 0, 3, 6, 8 and 9. Dark Yuji rolled the 33 and an extra block appeared between the two existing blocks. Its pattern combined with the semicircles formed the number 33. Although the riddle was solved, Zork get another attack and Dark Bakura rolled the 12. Zork swiped at the adventurers, sliced the tower in two. However, due to the adventurers' high-speed statistics, they had managed to escape. After the puzzle was solved, the adventurers were then behind Zork and proceeded to make a sneak attack. Dark Yuji rolled a 15 for Jinouchi, who hit Zork in the stomach. Having snuck up on Zork, the adventurers got extra attacks. Dark Yuji channeled his friend's anger into the dice and rolled a critical 9 for a Honda shot to hole in Zork's chest, a 13 for Anzu, who attacked Zork with Apprentice Death Blaze, a critical 8 for Yuji, whose beast attack got Pokey Eye and Pow to attack Zork. Despite the amount of critical hits, Zork wasn't too badly injured, since the adventurers were only level 1. Took out dice that he had brainwashed by sealing the souls of Ryo Bakura's old gaming friends in them. With them, he rolled a super critical 00, causing Zork to blast the adventurers with his Dark Catastrophe attack, which is supposed to instantly kill any figure with less than 50 HP. However, Ryo had reclaimed the use of his left hand due to Dark Bakura's relationship with Zork, who had lost his left hand. Using his left hand, Ryo was able to change the calculations so that each adventurer had 1 HP left. Ryo typed "I'm Ryo Bakura. I won't let you kill my friends. I'll fight too," onto the computer Dark Bakura was using, and Dark Bakura began to realize what was going on. Dark Yuji rolled another critical 05, allowing Jinouchi to stab Zork in the left eye. This caused Dark Bakura to feel something in his own left eye. Zork and Anzu tied on initiative for the next move and needed to roll to see who went first. Dark Bakura tried using the brainwashed dice to roll a 00, but Ryo swapped them with regular dice and Dark Bakura only rolled a 10, which he initially read as a 00 due to his eye injury. Dark Yuji rolled a 09, allowing Anzu to use healing magic of the owner to heal the adventurers. Dark Bakura prepared to roll for Zork again, needing to get 80 or less for Zork to err. However, Ryo tossed the brainwashed dice with his left hand and forced them to land on a 99, causing Zork to fumble and blast himself, dropping his HP to 125 angrily. Dark Bakura impaled his left hand on the pointed roof of a tower on the castle diorama, preventing Ryo from interfering any further. Dark Yuji heard Dark Bakura mention Ryo, and the adventurers were surprised by Dark Bakura's facial expression and actions. They began to suspect that the Bakura they were facing was not the same Bakura that they had made friends with. Yuji rolled a 5 for Yuji and got him to use his hand power on Zork. Dark Bakura laughed that it wouldn't work, as Zork would never become their ally. However, the training hand went into Zork's left wrist and pulled the White Wizard Ryo Bakura out of Zork's arm. White Wizard Bakura explained that he was a level 13 NPC created by Ryo Bakura and asked to join the adventurers party. White Wizard Bakura used his magic to lower Zork's defenses, and Dark Yuji rolled a 15 for Honda, who shot a hole in the left of Zork's stomach, dropping his HP to 81. Zork's HP dropping, Dark Bakura went on to his last resort and got Zork to transform into Last Zork, leveling up his attack and defense values. Dark Bakura then rolled a 00 and got Zork to use his Zork Inferno attack. However, White Wizard Bakura used Shining Shield level 13 to shield the adventurers from the worst of the blast, leaving Honda, Anzu, Yuji, Junauchi and Bakura are left with 1, 3, 2, 1 and 1 HP. Anzu offered to heal the party on her next turn, but Bakura explained that he didn't have enough energy to protect the party from another attack and insisted they use their turns to try and destroy Last Zork before he got another attack. Yuji wondered why Zork didn't transform into his more powerful form sooner. Dark Yuji suspected it was a gamble where Dark Bakura made Zork stronger at the risk of exposing a weak point. Dark Yuji then noticed the eye on Last Zork's stomach that opened when he attacked and concluded that it was the weak point. Dark Bakura was convinced that the eye was about to close before the adventurers could attack it. However, Pokey-Eye flew into the eye hole to hold it open. Pokey-Eye called on the adventurers to attack itself and Zork, but the adventurers refused to sacrifice a friend. Dark Yuji rolled a 02 for Yuji, who used his Jet Stream Punch attack. The training hand formed a fist and punched through Last Zork's weak point, grabbing Pokey-Eye in the process. Dark Yuji rolled a 01 for Junauchi, who sliced Last Zork in two. Despite the damage, Last Zork remained standing and Dark Yuji and Dark Bakura needed to roll for initiative to see who moved next. After the game, White Wizard Bakura was revealed to be a shard of the real Bakura's soul, and when Dark Yuji rolled a super critical, Wizard Bakura managed to use its magic to revive Bakura. The next day, everyone, including Mr. Karada, were released from the miniatures, with them not remembering them being sealed as miniatures. Bakura then arrived at school, having built a diorama of each of them during their Monster World adventure.
What can I say? From what I read in Yu-Gi-Oh! Volumes 6 and 7, Monster World looks like a pretty fun game. I mean, it has a really distinct race list and class list. In all fairness, it just seems like this has the potential to be either the next Dungeons and Dragons or a more popular version of Dungeons and Dragons. And Konami could make it happen. All they'd have to do is make a Monster World RPG. And hell, they could do it by bringing other classes into the game and just modeling them after different Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters. And since Dungeons and Dragons itself has become a trope on TV, I'm pretty sure that a game like this would be successful.
Cards is a Chinese card game in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. The game involves collecting suits of Chinese dragon cards and having them battle. A player who loses the game has their soul sucked into the soul-eaten jar by the 25 dragons that appear in the game. The soul is fully digested over 3 months after being sealed. The cards in the pot have been bound with a sealing cord to trap their evil powers. The game is played using a single deck of cards shared by the 2 players. Each card represents a dragon, which has one of the 5 Chinese elements: earth, fire, metal, water and wood, and a level from 1 to 5 for a total of 25 possible dragons. There are 3 copies of each card, making a total of 75 cards in the deck. Both players draw 6 cards at the start of a game. Each turn a player draws 1 card and discards 1. A player may pick up the last card their opponent discarded instead of drawing from the deck. Some of the strategy of the game lies in analyzing the opponent's discards to predict what they plan to summon. After gathering 2 sets of 3 identical cards that the player is satisfied with, they may play the 2 dragons corresponding to the cards they gathered. The opponent continues until they draw the cards they need before playing their dragons. Dragons get stronger each turn that passes after they have been summoned. Once both players have summoned their dragons, they battle with them. The player who defeats both of their opponent's 2 dragons wins. Dragons with higher levels are stronger than dragons of lower levels. Each element strengthens and weakens other elements.
Well, what can I say? Dragon Cards is an amazing shadow game, and it kind of seems more or less like a cross between chess and poker, but with dragons involved. Before the English release of this chapter of the manga, I couldn't wait to get my copy of Shonen Jump, because this game really intrigued me, and I would really like it if this game was real. Too bad it isn't. But hey, if black magic was real, this is one of the shadow games that I would be more than willing to replicate.
Monster Chess, often abbreviated to Capmon, is a board game from the Yu-Gi-Oh manga rules. The rules were an altered version of chess. The manga gave the rules, as each player has 5 capsule monsters. Each monster has a different level. The player to destroy all their opponent's monsters wins. Although never stated to be rule, the monsters were always chosen at random. Levels ranged from 1 to 5. The game was set up by placing your monsters in a line on your side of the board divided into many squares. Monsters can move, but it is unclear how many spaces they could move. Monsters could destroy lower level monsters by moving into their squares. In the case of a die of levels, both monsters are destroyed. Each monster had 1 or more abilities. However, the abilities were never fully explained, as they were only given bleak descriptions such as dig. Located in the corners were evolution squares. If you move a monster to an evolution square on your opponent's side of the board, they evolve into a more powerful, higher level monster.
And yes, I know that they put out a Capsule Monsters collectible figure game, but that's not exactly what I'm talking about. When I either say that I would like this game to be real, or that Konami should make it real, I mean, they should replicate it in a way where it's exactly the way it's portrayed in the manga. Even going so far as to being able to get them out of these coin-operated vending machines, somehow incorporating the mechanic that certain monsters would have special abilities while others don't, and somehow find a way to encapsulate the evolution space into the game.
Monsters or DDM rules the different types: dragon, red beast, green, undead, yellow, warrior, blue, and spellcaster white. The different types of crests: summon, movement, magic, attack, defense, and trap. There are over 500 different dice. Each die contains a monster. Dice are color-coded to indicate the monster's type. White are spellcasters, blue are warriors, yellow are undead, green are beasts, red are dragons. The exception are black dice, which contain special abilities. A black die with a red summon crest is called a rare black die. In addition to a monster, a rare black die contains a special square on the inside of one of its faces. Each die has a crest on each face. The different types of crests are summon, movement, magic, attack, defense, and trap. Summon crests on a die indicates the monster's level. Level 1 monsters have 4 crests. Level 2 monsters have 3 crests. Level 3 monsters have 2 crests. Level 4 monsters have 1 crest. Some crests have a number inside them, indicating their amount. Monsters inside the dice have an ET number, death number, and some have special abilities set up. 2 to 4 people can play. Each player has a dice pool of 12 dice. Each player is represented by a dungeon master, which has 3 life points at the beginning of the game. Each player has a dungeon consisting of 4 squares at opposite sides of the table. The dungeon masters are placed in their dungeons. Each player starts with 3 randomly dispensed dice. It is randomly determined who goes first. At the beginning of their turn, the turn player is dispensed more dice. Until they have 3, the turn player rolls their 3 dice. If 2 of the players' dice land on summon crests, they may place one of those which landed on a summon crest on the board in such a way that when it unfolds, it connects to their dungeon. The 6 sides of the dice are added to the player's dungeon, and the monster inside is placed in their dungeon on one of the dice squares. When a rare black die is unfolded, its special square contains an item, which monsters can interact with. Non-summon crests rolled by the player are stored in their crest pool. Each movement crest can be used to move the monster one space. Attack crests can be used to attack monsters in adjacent squares. Attack, defense, movement, magic, and trap crests can be used as costs to activate monsters' effects. When a monster attacks another, the one with lower ET is destroyed. Each time a dungeon master is attacked, it loses a life point. When the dungeon master loses all its life points, its controller loses.
Okay, elephant out of the room. I know that this is a real game. Mattel made the American version, where Konami made the Japanese version. And if anything, what I mean when I say that they should make this into a real game is that they should bring back Dungeon Dice Monsters and essentially make it an identical replica of the Japanese version. The superior version with dice that actually connect to become pieces of the board, like on the show or in the manga, and even expand upon that by building alternate stages like the Dark Field from the manga. Perhaps at least try to incorporate a system similar to the one where the hole opens up, the die go in, and they shuffle the die like on the show and in the manga. And while they're at it, they could always try creating more than one type of dungeon master and actually call them dungeon masters as opposed to dice lord or monster lord or dungeon lord or whatever they were called in the American version that was completely inferior to the Japanese version.
Duo monsters, originally known as Magic and Wizards, is the card game played in the various Yu-Gi-Oh manga. It was created by Maximilian Pegasus, who based the card designs on ancient Egyptian carvings and hieroglyphs. The basic rules were used during Death Tea and earlier. There are 2 players in each duel. Each player makes a deck using 40 cards. The decks are shuffled before a duel. There are 2 kinds of cards, monster cards and spell cards. Each player starts with 2,000 life points. If a player runs out of life points, they'll lose at the beginning of the duel. Each player draws 5 cards, which become their hand. The players take turns. Each turn the turn player draws 1 card from their deck. If a player cannot draw, because there are no more cards in their deck, they lose. The turn player can summon cards from their hand in attack or defense mode. Attack mode is vertical. Defense mode is horizontal. The turn player can attack with attack mode monsters. If an attack mode monster battles another attack mode monster, the monster with the lower attack is destroyed and its controller loses life points equal to the difference when attack mode monsters with equal attack battle. Both are destroyed. If an attack mode monster attacks a defense mode monster and its attack is higher than the defending monster's def, the defending monster is destroyed and no life points are lost. If an attack mode monster attacks a defense mode monster and its attack is lower than the defending monster's def, neither monster is destroyed and the controller of the attacking monster loses life points equal to the difference in the attack and def. If a player does not have a monster to defend from their opponent's monster's attack, the monster's attack is deducted from the defenseless players. Life points destroyed cards go to the graveyard. The turn player can activate spell cards from their hand. Spell cards cannot battle, but can be used to affect other cards, or the player's spell cards can be played face down on the field until they are ready to be used. Spell cards are sent to the graveyard after they have been used. Some monsters have effects which alter gameplay. There are 2 players in each duel. Each player makes a deck using 40 cards. The decks are shuffled before a duel. There are 2 kinds of cards, monster cards and spell cards. Each player starts with 2,000 life points. If a player runs out of life points, they'll lose at the beginning of the duel. Each player draws 5 cards, which become their hand. The players take turns. Each turn the turn player draws 1 card from their deck. If a player cannot draw, because there are no more cards in their deck, they lose. The turn player can summon cards from their hand in attack or defense mode. Attack mode is vertical. Defense mode is horizontal. The turn player can attack with attack mode monsters. If an attack mode monster battles another attack mode monster, the monster with the lower attack is destroyed and its controller loses life points equal to the difference when attack mode monsters with equal attack battle. Both are destroyed. If an attack mode monster attacks a defense mode monster and its attack is higher than the defending monster's def, the defending monster is destroyed and no life points are lost. If an attack mode monster attacks a defense mode monster and its attack is lower than the defending monster's def, neither monster is destroyed and the controller of the attacking monster loses life points equal to the difference in the attack and def. If a player does not have a monster to defend from their opponent's monster's attack, the monster's attack is deducted from the defenseless players. Life points destroyed. Cards go to the graveyard. The turn player can activate spell cards from their hand. Spell cards cannot battle, but can be used to affect other cards or the player's spell cards can be played face down on the field until they are ready to be used. Spell cards are sent to the graveyard after they have been used. Some monsters have effects which alter gameplay. Standard rules contain the basic rules, with some additional ones. These were used during the Duelist Kingdom tournament. More types of cards were added, including Equip, Trap, Illusion, and Virus. Several hybrids, such as Trap Spell, also exist. Trap cards can be activated during either player's turn in response to certain actions. Only one trap card can be used per turn. Virus cards are used to destroy cards in the opponent's deck using a virus. Monsters were divided into monster and magic user cards. This distinction is rarely mentioned. Monsters and magic users have elements, each with strengths and weaknesses. The elements of magic users are black magic, white magic, demon magic, and illusion magic. Black magic is strong against white magic. White magic is strong against demon magic. Demon magic is strong against illusion magic. Illusion magic is strong against black magic. The monster's elements include earth, lightning, water, fire, and wood. Lightning is strong against water. Expert rules were used with the first version dual discs. This alters many of the previous rules and adds more. Each player can only hold 5 cards at a time. If a player has 5 cards at the start of their turn, they cannot draw a card. If a player has less than 5 cards at the start of their turn, they draw until they have 5. The dual disc contains 5 stages, the main card stage and 4 sub-card stages. The main card is played in the main stage. All the players' other cards in their hand are played in the sub-stages. Monsters in their main monster can be played in attack or defense mode. Monsters in the sub-stages are all in attack mode. The main card gets special abilities and powers from the sub-cards. Sub-cards are face down until used or attacked. Sub-cards can be flipped face down and shuffled. A player's main monster can attack their opponent's main monster or any of the opponent's face down cards. Normal rules of battle are applied if they attack a monster card. Spell, trap, or virus cards are automatically destroyed if they are attacked. Expert rules were introduced in the Battle City tournament, as well as the course of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. They are based on the standard rules, contain additional rules, and alter previous ones. The expert rules do not apply and each player starts with 4,000 life points. A player's hand cannot contain more than 7 cards. High-level monsters require sacrifices to be summoned. Level 5 and 6 monsters require 1 sacrifice. Level 7 or higher monsters require 2 sacrifices.
Come on, was there any doubt that this would be number one on the list? I mean, just imagine if there was an alternate version of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game that was similar to its manga counterpart. When I say similar, I mean identical. And it would be even better if it was brought to life by black magic, Egyptian magic, or solid vision technology. I think an alternate version of Yu-Gi-Oh! That is essentially exactly like its manga counterpart would be a really big success. Just imagine if Konami threw a Duelist Kingdom tournament with a cash prize and everything, with the combatants using cards from an alternate version of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game that are identical to the cards from the manga. And when I say that these cards would read just like their manga counterparts, I mean it. They would. Some card texts would make sense, and others wouldn't. But they would all have effects that would be identical to their manga counterparts. Everyone involved in this tournament would start outside the castle and would eventually duel each other on different terrains or fields or monster habitats or whatever you want to call it, that would essentially give different monsters random power-ups or power-downs depending on where they were summoned. And to go all the way with this idea, just imagine how cool it would be if Konami actually built duel boxes all over this island that actually had solid vision inside of them, so that when you threw a card down, a hologram of the monster, magic, spell, or trap card would instantly appear on the board. They could even go so far as to have a hidden level to empower zombie-type monsters, as well as another secret underground level underneath the castle for labyrinth dueling that would work in the same way it did in the manga, as a 2-on-2 battle. And to weed out the combatants until there are only either 4 or 8 remaining, they could probably try simulating the original version of the duel disc and have the competitors clash outside the castle like Yugi and Kaiba did. Starships would be involved, and the players who can gain 10 of them would actually gain access to the inside of a castle for the final round of said tournament held by Konami. And I know that this sounds like a crazy idea, but then again, Tokyosaurus posted his video, Yu-Gi-Oh! Reveals Future of Card Games, 2 whole years ago. So for all we know, a tournament like this and an alternate version of Yu-Gi-Oh! identical to the one in the manga, this whole thing could easily happen. Link in the description. And if by some corporate miracle that were to happen, maybe Konami would want to capitalize on the success even further by replicating Battle City and having the players who are battling in this alternate version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually play with the anti-rules. Throw in the puzzle cards to find out where the finals will be located. And like in the manga, you'd probably have to play all your monster cards face down so that the dual disc could read them. But hey, if you're dueling on the go, that would probably be for the best. And maybe if this whole thing was popular enough, this alternate version of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, Konami would do a third tournament inspired by the events of Yu-Gi-Oh! R. And that is my list of the top 10 games that from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga that I either wish were real or think that Konami should try to replicate for the real world. If you agree with me, please tell me in the comments. If you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day.